On its face, this double standard that I apply to crabs versus bugs makes no sense considering that they are the same basic thing. Insects are crustaceans. That is the mainstream phylogenetic view nowadays. Not all crustaceans are insects, but all insects are crustaceans, or at least pancrustaceans. Every animal in this steamer basket is now considered under the taxonomic umbrella Pancrustacea. They're all in the same clade, and believe it or not, bugs taste like crabs too, if you eat them a certain way. I'ma show you. The big difference between insects and land crabs, like my vampire crabs here, is how recently their ancestors first crawled up out of the water. Let's say we took these cooked larvae and we squeezed out their meaty insides like toothpaste. People do this with a rolling pin to get the meat out of smaller crab legs. That is pure bug meat, no shell. How does it taste? Like crab. Seriously, when you isolate the muscle tissue of bugs, it tastes like crab or shrimp, except without the taste of the sea in there. There's no fishy taste in there, it's just the taste of the meat. This should be hardly surprising given that crabs and bugs are basically the same thing.
In the body of those who believe and seek to perfect their faith and walk in the Mashiach and the God of Israel, there's one topic that still pokes its head here and there. And this topic has the ability to separate friends, family members, pastors, deacons, whatever have you. And the topic can be summed up with one question. Since the death and resurrection of Yahshua, the Messiah, who some people call Jesus, are we now allowed to consume unclean animals? We're going to look at the verses that support either side, dive into them, find out exactly what our Father would have us do, because we are told to earnestly contend for the faith which was delivered unto the saints. Now, some pastors will start to look at the saints in the New Testament, but I tell you, they were not the first. We have to start back in the beginning. But while we're in the New Testament, let's go to Revelations 14:12. It says, "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahshua." So this is what classifies you as a saint. It's not just your belief. It's your obedience. And your obedience to what? His word. Now, we can all agree on that. Then the next question becomes, well, what of his word still pertains to us today? And we're going to get into the matter of that. Now, Yah does indeed have a plan and a set ordinance for mankind that we ought to follow. And his plan is perfect. It does not change. The issue is that we err. And as a result, there are things that are augmented or have to be substituted in action of our error. And to know this for sure, we can read in Malachi 3:6. It says, "For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed." He's letting us know that if he made a promise way back to our ancestor, that regardless of what has taken place now, he still intends on keeping his bargain. The only question is, can we? So if he's ever said it, he's going to do it. And if he ever told us not to do it, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a verse in the Bible where you find him now annulling what he told you not to do. But case in point, when we were in the Garden of Eden, you do realize that we didn't even consume animals. You know, in Genesis chapter 2, we go all the way down to verse 8, and it says, "Now the Lord Yah had planted a garden in the east, in Eden. And there he put the man he had formed. And the Lord Yah made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, the trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food." Okay? In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, the only thing that we see about consumption here is things that come from trees, the fruits thereof. And we didn't have to grow our food. Yah had already provided that for us. We just had to grab it. Also, too, you know that there was no animal being eaten, because in order for animals to be eaten, they had to have died. And there was no death in the land, because sin brings death. For we read in Romans chapter 6, verse 23, "For the wages of sin is death." And for those who need an explanation biblically as to what sin is, in 1 John 3:4 we read, "Whoever committeth sin transgresseth the law, for sin is the transgression of the law." Transgression simply means breaking here, meaning again that if the Most High said it and you do not obey, then you are indeed sinning. So Adam and Eve were told not to eat from a certain tree. I want you guys to pay attention to this. They were told not to eat from a certain tree. See, this is how sin got brought into the land, because you have unchecked hunger or unchecked intrigue in something that you are not to consume. Now, whether you believe that they physically ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or if it was an idea that they ingested mentally, spiritually, on a different level, matters not. Either way, we know that they ended up consuming something that was never meant for them, and then sin got brought into the land. Way before we get the commandments on what is good for food and what is not. Now, as a result of this sin, based on them consuming things that they were not supposed to eat or consume, then we find out that, hey, everything's changed. Your diet, Earth's physiology, your environment, everything's changed. The animals changed, the plants changed, and all for the worse. At that point, do you then see things that are being given for consumption and things that are not? I do not use the term unclean and clean foods, because for the untrained mind, what they'll say is, whether it's clean or unclean, it's still food. It's all food. That's false. It's unclean and clean animals. These things were never considered food for us. The badger, the rat, the cat, the dog, the pig, and several others were never considered food for the true student or the true follower of Yah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So a lot of Christians equate the unclean foods simply like, well, if you drop the cookie, it's unclean, but you can still dust it off and eat it. That's not what we're saying. These things were never meant to be consumed at any level. Now again, because Adam and Eve sinned by consuming something that Yah told them not to do, everything's changed. There's going to be death in the land. As a matter of fact, the first death was probably the animal that was sacrificed to make skins for Adam and Eve to now cover their known nakedness. I want you to ponder on that. But you can further read about the animals that are now fit for consumption and the animals that are unclean for consumption in Leviticus chapter 11 and Deuteronomy 14. And then one may be asking themselves, well, if we can't eat the animals, why would Yah place them here? Well, because now you have an earth that is more along the lines of defilement, and there's going to be waste. There's going to be death and decay. And there were no trash services. There were no concierge services. There were no maids. There weren't any things that we have today and play. And so you needed a natural way to cleanse the earth. So all the animals that are unclean have one thing in common. They eat the nasty stuff. They eat the waste. They eat the refuge. So you have things in the air, the fowl of the air, like the crow, the buzzard, the eagle, the vultures, the condors. They pick at dead flesh that's on the side of the road, because you're not going to want to eat that, correct? You're not even going to pick that up and move it out of the road. You're going to swerve. You don't want to touch it, especially when it's been out there for some days in the heat and it's maggot filled, and you're not going to want to deal with that. On land, you have things like the badger, the wolverine, and of course the pig, which is one of the most infamous. They eat the same thing, their refuse. And in the ocean, you have what they know as the bottom feeders. I call them Delmar la cucaracha, the cockroaches of the sea, because that's essentially what they are. And they cleanse the sea, because you're not going to want to swim 30,000 feet below and cleanse all of the refuse, all of the dumps, all of the dead carcasses and stuff like that. So y'all put that in place for us to keep our environment clean, because cleanliness, though they may say is next to godliness, I'm going to say that cleanliness is a form of godliness, because everything must be done in decency and in order. And what could be decent if it's not clean? And if your house isn't clean, we know you ain't in order. Things are not put back where they belong. The shoes are all scattered around. Your dishes are out the cupboard. Nothing's in order. It's chaos and confusion, which we know he's not the author of. Now, of course, some people will go to Genesis 9 to further point that all animals are fit for human consumption. It says, then Yah blessed Noah and his son, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, and on all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you, just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat the meat that has lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood will I surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal, and from each human being too, I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. You're going to read about us abstaining from meat with blood in it again. Some interpretations or translations say food. But again, the Most High is not going back over what's meant for human consumption. There's a variety of fish that we can eat. He's not going to rename all the fish for Noah to be able to eat. There's already been given a variety of land animals that we can eat. The Most High is not going to repeat that. Somebody may say, well, wait a minute. That list wasn't given until Leviticus chapter 11. We're in Genesis. Apparently, Noah knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. Because if you go to 2 chapters before in Genesis chapter 7, verse 2, we read, "You shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and its female. 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and its female." Noah was commanded to take 7 pairs, a pair being male and female of clean animals, and 1 pair of unclean animals. And let me tell you why you're reading this distinction. It is because the unclean animals you're not going to need many of. We don't eat those. Not only do we not eat those, they're also not fit for sacrifice. You could not offer them up to Yah. He himself doesn't even want unclean animals. So then why would he then tell Noah to eat the unclean animals? Noah already knew what was kosher and what was not. There was no need in Genesis 9 for him to repeat all the intricacies of what Noah clearly already knew, and we can confirm that by reading Genesis chapter 7. Now for the clean animals, you're going to need more of them. You're going to need 7 pairs because 1, you need to repopulate the earth, and you guys are going to need food. 2, for your offerings up to the Most High, you're also going to need that. So when you go to Catholic school or Sunday Bible study school, you know, they got a pair of each animal, clean and unclean. You got a pair of giraffes with a pair of lambs. That's not accurate. Noah purposely put more clean animals, as he was told by the Father, than unclean. Many people overlook this. Again, these animals that Yah is telling him, I too give you these to eat. He's letting him know, yeah, you can eat them. They're fine. It's good. And the reason why he would need to restate that is because, you know, every time something bad happens, I told you about the augmentations. So the first big augmentation was with Adam and Eve. Now we can eat meat. Before then, we couldn't eat meat. And then the question became, well, which meat to eat? The earth has just been flooded. And Yah is telling him now when it's time to disembark, hey, the meats I told you that you can eat before, you can still eat them. I give you all of those. Just make sure you drain them of blood first. But moving on. When you get into 1 Timothy chapter verse 4, verses 4 through 5, you have Paul writing to Timothy here. And this is one of those verses that you're going to hear often taken out of context. Let's read it. It says, "For every creature of Yah is good, and nothing to be refused if it be received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified by the word of Yah and prayer." So people will read this and say, see, anything is fit to be eaten so long as we receive it with thanksgiving. And I ask, so if I come to your house and I bring you pieces of human flesh, charbroiled and steamed and sauteed, that's okay to eat, yes? So long as you receive it with thanksgiving, yeah? As a matter of fact, you should not refuse it because according to what you just read to me, it's not to be refused if it be received with thanksgiving. Verse 5 makes this entire thing fit into the rest of scripture. It says, "For it is sanctified by the word of Yah." And then we see prayer. See, they'll have you believe that by simply praying over the most unclean things, it now makes it kosher. That's not true. What sanctifies something is the word of Yah. Now, when you read 1 Timothy, you have to understand that the only book that they had around was the Torah. They did not have the New Testament. The New Testament was still being lived out. And what does the Torah say about the pork and the badger and all these other unclean animals? They are never sanctified by the word of Yah. Simply praying over one's food, no matter how junctified or unclean it is, will not magically make it clean if it does not align with the word of God first. And the word of God, the only word that was around when 1 Timothy was being lived out, is the Torah. Yes, we thank him for this meal, and that's the prayer. But the meal that we will be thanking him for would never be pork or shrimp casserole, or pork chops, or ham. That just wasn't what we did. The laws of the clean and unclean animals they're like the moral laws. They have been in effect since the beginning of creation. Therefore, we really can't brush them off with the argument that they were merely the mosaic of the law of Moses only given to ancient Israel. That is incorrect. In Acts 10:34, we read that Yah is no respecter of persons. And if you read the Bible, you'll see that when these laws were being reissued to Israel, there was always a clause that stated, this is for the foreigner and the native. If they want to worship me, they must worship me this way. They cannot come to me and say, we're going to do everything but this. We're still going to keep Christmas, or we're still going to keep Easter, or we're still going to keep our pagan dishes that we love to eat so much because, it's just tradition. It doesn't work that way. If the native and the natural have to do it, how much so be it the ones being engrafted in? You don't get to tell him how you're going to worship him. You didn't write your own book. When you write your own book, then you can tell people how you're going to worship. But if you're coming to serve and worship the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the creator of all life, the author of the Ten Commandments, you must follow what he says. It is also erroneous for you to believe that his own son, who did hit the Father's will, we read, came and made a whole new religion with big contradictions to what the Father has already had mankind doing for over millennia. Yahshua the Messiah and the Father moved as one because Yahshua only did the Father's will, even when he didn't want to do it, as expressed in the verse that you see on the screen. Another verse on the screen that throws a big rock into this whole thing that he started a new religion and made everything lawful that was unlawful is in Matthew 5:17. He says, think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy but to fulfill. First off, the first few words is think not. I don't know why people read that and think so, or think that he did. He says, think not that I've come to destroy the law, okay, or the prophets. I am not come to destroy. He repeated it one more time, just for those who have a hard time understanding. He says, but to fulfill. Now, destroying and fulfilling are two different things, okay? You cannot fulfill something that you are also destroying. If you get with a woman as a man and you seek to enrich her life, because that's what fulfillment is. You seek to spread out like water and hitting all the crevices, all the corridors, those that you can see, those that you can't even see. You understand? That's fulfilling. Now, you cannot fulfill that woman and then also destroy her at the same time. And this is why he's telling you all in Christianity and you all elsewhere that everything that was in play before him, that stuff still stands. He is the fulfillment of that. Because to say that he did away with that is to say that what y'all had us do from the jump was erroneous or it was lacking in something. No, we know that y'all's plan is always perfect. And if you do see any deviations or augmentations as stated earlier, it's because of us, not him. And then you have his son who is moving in tandem with him. So what do you think the message of him is going to be? The same one that the Father gave. He didn't come to legalize sin. He told that woman to get up and sin no more, lest worse things befall upon you. Some of you all think that Yahshua died, that Jesus died so that you can live a sinful life. No. We read in Romans 6:15, what then shall we sin? Because we are not under the law, but under grace? Certainly not. Paul writes this again. You all think that because you have the grace period or grace window that you can just wantonly, purposely sin and break commandments. And that's not true. When you owe something a bill and it's late, and the billing company gives you a grace period to get your act and your finances together, does that absolve you of the debt that you owe? No. That's just giving you time to get right. And that's what the grace window is. It's giving you time to get right. But that time is not indefinite. The time is not forever. The time is now to repent while you still can. Do not allow the enemy to make you believe that the grace that's been extended to you that will never be extended to him because they won't obey gives you permission to live how you want to live and eat what you want to eat. Moving on. Another verse that these people use to say that we can eat anything is in Matthew 15, And they just go straight to verse 10. It says, Yahshua called the crowd to him and said, listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile him or them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. And you see, they'll take that verse right there, completely ignoring everything else that puts it into its proper context, and will create an entire doctrine. And we're not to do that. You cannot cherry pick the Bible like that. In actuality, if you go up and start at verse 1, you'll read what's going on here. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Yahshua from Jerusalem and asked, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. See, now here's the issue with you all. They're not breaking the biblical Torah. There is nothing in the Torah that states that you shall wash your hands before you eat your food. But because you all don't know the Torah, because you all don't have a desire to read the Old Testament that made the Bereans be championed, you don't know that. What they're talking about here is the tradition of the elders, and that comes from a book known as the Talmud that was already in vogue during the time of Yahshua. Now, there it is written that you ought to wash your hands before you eat. But Yahshua is going against that. He's not going to keep the traditions and religions of man over that of his Father. Remember, he does what his Father says, not what churchianity and Christianity says. Says in verse 3, Yahshua replied, and why do you break the command of Yah for the sake of your tradition? For Yah said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help them, a father or mother, is devoted to Yah, they are not to honor their father or mother with it. See? Let me stop there. Here you have the classic battle of, do we follow what our parents told us and what our leaders are seeing and saying, or do we follow what the word of Yah says? Continuing, it says, thus you nullify the word of Yah for the sake of your tradition, you hypocrites. Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you, saying, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. Then you get to verse 10. This entire dialogue has nothing to do with clean and unclean animals. He's talking about the leavening that's in these local religious leaders. We're not talking about physical leavening either. We're not talking about physical yeast. We're talking about the stuff that brings on sin, the iniquity, the double-mindedness of a person. Yes, you dress and you look awesome in your Sunday's church best, but inwardly you are far from the Father, and he knows it. And some of you do too. Therefore, it doesn't matter what you eat. When your inside is dirty, it's just dirty. You're defiled. Doesn't matter what cologne you put on, you stink. You know, people with bad breath, they often will tell you, the doctors, that if you smell someone with bad breath, that's because something inside of them is bad. If someone has bad skin, it's because something inside of them is off. You understand? We live in a world where we try to treat the outer extremities while completely ignoring the inward causes. And this is what Yahshua is dealing directly with. So woe to you preachers and you so-called prophets who misquote and mistranslate to lead the flock to slaughter. I also want to caution all of you who are following these said individuals, because in verse 13, Yahshua says, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Leave them. They are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. That's an ominous warning. But if you still need more interpretation from the Bible itself about what Yahshua meant in verse 10 when you get to 16, because Peter's still asking in verse 15 to explain the parable. So Yahshua says in verse 16, are you still so dull? Yahshua asked him, don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then comes out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth comes from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile them. See, he didn't say, but eating pork is what not defiles them. He didn't say, but eating with shrimp and crab does not defile them. He simply said, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile them, because that's what they're talking about. Y'all better wake up. The last verse that we're going to go at is in the book of Acts chapter 10. This is a Gentile Roman man named Cornelius looking for Peter. But I'm going to skip down to the verse that you're going to hear these preachers quote from. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the last verse. I'm going to do what they don't do and read you the entire segment. In verse 14, Peter says, "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time. "Do not call anything impure that Yah has made clean." So this is the segment that they read right here, yeah. Okay, and this is what gives them that doctrine to eat all the unclean animals that they want. However, let's read the entire chapter. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion, in what was known as the Italian regiment. Okay, so he's not Hebrew, he's a Roman. He's a Gentile. The Gentiles were always known to be unclean to us. We called them unclean. It's very important. He and all his family were devout and Yah-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to Yah regularly. One day at about 3 in the afternoon, he had a vision. He distinctly saw an angel of Yah who came to him and said, "Cornelius." Cornelius stared at him in fear. "What is it, Lord?" he asked. The angel answered, "Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before Yah. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon, who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea." When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called 2 of his servants and a devout soldier, who was one of his attendants. He told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. Here we get to verse 9. Here's where things get interesting. This is Peter's vision. About noon following the day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat, and while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven open and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." Peter says, "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice said to him, or spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that Yah has made clean." This happens 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. Stop. This is after Yahshua had died and resurrected. This is like 20 so years after Yahshua died and resurrected, right? So if when he died and resurrected, all of his apostles knew that you are now free to eat any unclean animals, why 20-something years later is one of the apostles arguing 3 times with heaven? I'm not eating that. Do you think that he just has that kind of pride and audacity to argue with heaven? No, it's because we knew better. We knew that Yahshua did not die so that we can break commandments and live sinfully. And we wanted to eat. So he's not understanding why would heaven tell me to eat unclean animals? And when you get to verse 17, it says, while Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision. See, he's confused, as any true believer of Yah would have been. The men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. They called out asking if Simon, who was known as Peter, was staying there. While Peter was still thinking about the vision, see, he's still perplexed. It says the Spirit said to him, "Simon, 3 men are looking for you, so get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." Peter went down and said to the men, "I'm the one you're looking for. Why have you come?" The men replied, "We have come from Cornelius the centurion. He is a righteous and Yah-fearing man who is respected by all the Jew people." They say Jewish, but we wasn't Jewish. We were the real deal. We were the Jews, okay? A holy angel told him to ask you to come to his house so that he can hear what you have to say. Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guests. Now when you get down here, here's where it all gets tied in. The next day, Peter started out with them, and some of the believers from Joppa went along. The following day, he arrived in Caesarea. Cornelius was expecting them and called together his relatives and close friends. Yeah, he wants everybody to hear this renowned Jew speak. As Peter entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet in reverence. "Stand up," he said. "I am only a man myself." While talking with them, Peter went inside and found a large gathering of people. He said to them, "You are well aware that it is against all law for a Jew to associate with or visit a Gentile." Why? Because I told you earlier, we considered the Gentiles unclean. Keep reading. "But Yah has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean." That's what the vision was about. Wasn't about pork, wasn't about shrimp, wasn't about eating steak. It was about associating Gentiles with uncleanliness. Verse 29 says, so when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection. Could you see? Had Peter not have had the dream first, Peter would have never went. So again, when these pastors twist these, when they twist these scriptures, bruh, to support a doctrine that biblically does not align with anything else in the Bible, woe to you. The Bible is telling you what it means. All you have to do is read. Now again, most of these pastors that you hear this from are probably unfit. They probably got a gut from here to Timbuktu. They probably have high cholesterol, suffering from gout, diabetes, high blood pressure. And you want to know why? Because most of them probably eat unclean. And then turn around and look at their congregation. How many morbidly obese people you see sitting around too, cheering this message on to eat whatever you want to eat. When you go see the doctor and you have high cholesterol and they ask you, have you been eating a lot of crab, shrimp, lobster? They're going to tell you to cut that out your diet. That's one of the quickest, biggest ways to lower your cholesterol, your high blood pressure, the salt and sodium intake. You may say, but it's so creamy and buttery. Yes, it is. But it's junk food. It's junk. It's artery clogging junk. And it used to be food for poor people.
Why lobster went from a food for the poor to a luxury food. When America was first discovered, the immigrants who came here were disgusted by the vast amount of dead lobsters that washed up on shore, forming nearly 1-meter-high walls that emitted a foul odor. When they were short on food, they used dead lobsters to eat, so they had a terrible taste, leading them to believe that lobster meat was a terrible dish. That's why no one wanted to eat lobster. In 1836, the B&M Company began producing canned lobster with fresh meat. With the advantages of being quick to prepare and cheap, it sold a large number to the military. From then on, people discovered that lobster was delicious. Lobster became increasingly popular and gradually became a luxury food.
They rebranded and remarketed it and sold it to you all, and those in Babylon believe it. There's nothing luxurious about cockroaches of the sea. Wake up. But look, man, if you want to eat those things, just say that. I mean, Yahshua tells you, be hot or cold. If you look warm, you'll be spat out. This ain't the time right now. Never has there really been, but really right now. This isn't the time to be half in, half out, bro. Get with who you gonna get with, do what you gonna do, and go with your move and be about it. At least if you play for the other team, honestly, there's a better chance for you being converted and then honestly coming over to this side. But when you pretend to do and know both, man, that's how you get capped, being caught in the middle of the act, you hear me? And it's things that you may be unsure about. If you're unsure about doing them and you feel like that may jeopardize your walk, nothing on this earth is worth your salvation. So even if you have to question and you don't know, you don't have the facts, you are better off to be over concerned than under concerned and get to the gate only to be told, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness, I never knew you. And we already told y'all what lawlessness is. That's breaking the commandments. That's the workers of iniquity, the transgression of the law. That's what the Father says to do. And if you do not that and you do the opposite, you are workers of lawlessness. Yahshua himself says, depart from me, I never knew you. Nothing on this planet is worth hearing those words. Is pork and crab and shrimp that good for you? But yeah, listen, man. Choose today whom you shall serve. As for me and my family, we shall serve y'all. Y'all be blessed.